Kazia is an oncology drug development company, so we're focused entirely on developing new medicines for cancer. And right now we have two drugs in human trials for different forms of cancer. Our lead drug, paxalovid, is in a phase 3 trial for brain cancer. Phase 3 trial, of course, is the final stage of human testing. That's where we're trying to get a drug ready for submission to the FDA. And then we also have a second drug, EVT-801, which is earlier in the journey. That's in phase 1 human trials at the moment for a range of different forms of cancer. Paxalovid is a really interesting drug. It works by targeting a biochemical control mechanism in the tumor called the PI3K pathway. Now, the reason why this is relevant is that we know that many cancers are driven by having this PI3K pathway switched on. And not only that, but we know that if we switch it off with drug treatments that inhibit the PI3K pathway, it works as a treatment for a whole range of cancers. And we know that because there are 5 FDA-approved drugs in this class now. The unique thing about paxalovid is it's the only drug in this class that is able to get into the brain, that is able to cross the so-called blood-brain barrier. And so that obviously gives it a unique advantage in brain cancer. And that's why we've focused in this area in our development of the drug. There's some really interesting science behind this study. When we talk about a ketogenic diet, it sounds a little bit alternative, but actually there's some really solid science here. Professor Lou Cantley, who discovered the PI3K pathway, has shown in some of his more recent research that the lower the level of insulin in your system, the better PI3K inhibitors work. The best way to get the best effect out of these drugs is to get the level of insulin down as low as possible. And of course, the best way to get your insulin levels down is just to eat as little carbohydrate as possible. And that, in effect, is a ketogenic diet. So what we're trying to do here is really actually to target insulin levels, but doing it through ketogenic diet as a tool. And certainly in the animal studies, this looks fantastically effective. So we're now partnering with Weill Cornell Medicine in New York to see how this pans out in patients. Really interesting piece of research. Well, we just started recruiting in early 2022, so we're likely to see the first data probably early in 2023. The study is recruiting really well, so it may come in a little bit earlier, but for now, I think I'd probably err on the side of caution and say we want to see a good 12 months or so before we start thinking about data. So for now, I think we'd say somewhere in the first half of calendar 2023, but recognizing the way things are going, that could creep in a little bit earlier if it goes well. Well, we have an incredibly broad program around Paxalovid. We have 7 other clinical trials currently active with the drug. And these range across a whole spectrum of different forms of brain cancer. So we have our main registration study for Paxalovid called GBM Agile. This is the phase 3 study that's looking to secure FDA approval for the drug. That started about a year ago. We're expecting data by the end of 2023. And that's really the big ticket item for us. That's the study that will hopefully see the drug onto market. But behind that, we've got studies in, as I say, a whole range of different forms of brain cancer. We've got a couple of studies going on in a childhood brain cancer called DIPG, really horrible disease crying out for new treatments. We've got a study in a disease called primary CNS lymphoma. That's another form of adult brain cancer. And then 3 studies in brain cancer that has spread to the brain from other places in the body, what we call brain metastases. And those studies have been going for a year or 2 now, so starting to get quite imminent in terms of data. So I've said before, this is a program that many larger companies would be very envious of, and we're really proud of in Kazia. Well, I think there's probably three things that we're focused on through 2022. The first is just the operational execution of this very broad Paxlovid clinical trial program. This is a year where quite a number of these studies are going to be reading out data, and so we want to make sure that we're ready for that. We anticipate it. We can act swiftly to as that data comes through. So we really are focused very much on seeing these important data readouts in the Paxlovid program as we move through calendar 2022. Second thing is really moving EVT-801 along. I think we really see enormous value in this second program, and so we want to try and advance that as quickly as possible. And we anticipate some discussions with FDA later in the year to talk about how best to take that drug forward. And then finally, we recognize that Paxlovid is potentially within a couple of years of becoming a commercial pharmaceutical product. And there's a lot of work in preparation for that we need to start contemplating. And so there's a whole block of work for us which is focused not so much on Paxlovid as an R&D opportunity, as the subject of clinical trials, but as a potential commercial product. And so we're working hard on that in the background as well.